I'm here to attempt to answer the question, do you need to have these cards for the new format? Alright, to the 30% of you that have not smashed the ever-living crap out of that, subscribe and smash it so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. Photon Hypernova is basically caught off guard, or set off to the new format here. And do you need these cards in order to be able to play the game? Well, the first one I want to talk about here is Book of Eclipse. So this is very interesting. Is this going to be a main deck card or a side deck card? Because I'm already seeing in a lot of these online events here that people are focusing on this card in the main deck. And a lot of the early thoughts were this is going to be something that is going to be a side deck card. You know, they'll bring it in. But if the format is really starting to shape up to be as bad as people think it's going to be, then they're going to main deck this card just so that they have a chance to play the game. And that's actually kind of interesting to see that, you know, a card like Book of Eclipse, actually, in case you run into the Kashtira Mirror, you can be able to, you know, put it on the field and flip down the opponent's monsters. Because if your opponent sees that you're playing the Kashtira Mirror, they're probably going to lock your, you know, monsters up, because they don't want you to have the chance to play the game. So that's where you can, in the case of main decking the Book of Eclipse, you can tear through your opponent's field and effectively, well, win the game, ladies and gentlemen. That's what you, it's what we like to call the free chicken nuggies. Now, are there alternatives to Book of Eclipse? I mean, they're extremely cheap. It's just, if you're planning on playing this format, you know, whether or not you're planning to play the Kashtira Mirror or something rogue, is this something that you're going to need? And it's starting to look like more and more that you are going to need some sort of defense method. I mean, you have sphere modes and lava golems as well to kind of alleviate some of these, but like they sometimes don't end up quite as effective as just, you know, the offensive capabilities of a book slamming down, you know, freeing you up from the lock from Shangri-La and just generally giving you a chance to play the game. Like, the value that this card gives you is crazy good. So you have to think about that. So yes, Book of Eclipse definitely getting some value. Now, I want to mention a card that I'm seeing sided against the Book of Eclipse, and it's Forbidden Lance. And you're like, we're playing Forbidden Lance. Robbie, you got to be trolling me. Well, actually, no, I'm not. So one big thing that you have to understand about the way that Kashtira is actually starting to work as a deck is Shangri-La is the way that the deck works. You know, you don't set up some crazy, like, you don't do what the other Yu-Gi-Oh decks do, where you're like, oh, I have all of these negates. No, you actually, you zone lock, you Diabolicist, look at your opponent's extract, like, those are the biggest things. So when a card like Book of Eclipse, which, once again, I just mentioned is seeing main deck play now, people, especially if you know your opponent's about to bring in books in the mirror match, then you can bring in Forbidden Lances as the counterplay to this. Because all Lances just targets a monster, it loses a counter attack, and then it becomes unaffected by the effects of other spells and traps for the turn. So if you see Book of Eclipse coming down, you chain the Lance, well, congratulations, your Shangri-La, your whatever that you need to keep on the field, whichever power card is going to be the card that you need to play, the Lance will give you protection options to do that. Now, is this going to be something that is going to see a lot of play in everything? I think that this was mainly a tech choice for the Kashtira Mirror match. Or anything that you think that the Book of Eclipse is going to get you a free win for. I don't know how viable that this is going to stick around, but it is definitely, when you can see the counterplay to the developing meta already showing up, that is hilarious. Alright, so very interesting to see Forbidden Lance of all things. I mean, once again, card's pretty solid. Next up is Gravekeeper's engraving. Robbie, you've been pushing this card. Do you have a warehouse of these? Well, no, I don't. When I first saw this card in the OCG, after the format shift took place, I was genuinely excited for it. But it took like ninjas actually playing the card to actually catch me off guard and go, wow, you know, like that's actually pretty solid. Because I guess the biggest thing I should say here is, for the amount of comments that I have read from people that are like, well, good luck drawing it, God. I mean, Ash Blossom and any hand trap ever says the exact same thing to you. And I ask you the same question. Well, if it's just draw it, 5-head, then I mean, like, the logic for Imperms, Ashablos, all of these cards that give you such amazing, you know, effects, you can say the exact same thing about them. But the thing that makes this card so unique in the sense of it is it creates that 2 turns. And I've said this a lot when I look at this card, is because you activate it in the beginning of your turn, you freeze your opponent so they can't do, you know, any of the shenanigans on your turn to do all the dumpy BS, and then you seal their graveyard. Their turn goes around, the graveyard's still sealed, so you get to set up and do whatever you want on your first turn of the game. Not have to deal with Kashtira looking at you going, you know, that's really, oh man, I love getting the chance to have this interaction of me playing on your turn. And that's where the engraving stops that. That's where the value in the card comes up. Yeah, you pot a prosperity into it, you can't play it till the next turn, sure. But I think that's fine, all right? So don't underestimate this card. That's what I think a lot of people are doing, and they're going to get very blown out by it at the end of the day. So very, very, very good. And then, of course, we have Nibiru. So this is a question that I've seen a lot of this format. And it is Nibiru really going to rotate back into the format? Is Kashtira really going to be that big of a threat that Nibiru just spins the format back on its head? I think the answer is yes, but maybe not in the capacity. Do you think? Do I think that it'll see play in the main deck? I think it'll be a side deck trend for a little while. The biggest things that you need to understand are going to be the placement of tier in the developing format. Wherever tier tends to land itself will be where we will see Space Rock's viability. But let me tell you this. If you watch an entire Kashtira player start to do their entire turn, you know, they don't set up any negates, all right? Like, they don't do anything really too out of the ordinary here. But if you Space Rock them out of left field, you get an entire, like, they're not recovering from that. Like, as long as you can do something on your turn to set up to make sure that, you know, like a unicorn specimen or a Fenrir on the next turn doesn't blow you out, you will be in a good position. And that's why, like, Nibiru is the power card going forward here, because it is just like the ultimate cleanup to anything that Kashtira could actually do. So I really do, when I say this wholeheartedly, I think that if you're planning on dealing with Kashtira this format, Nibiru will be one. Nibiru and Book of Eclipse will be some of the biggest ways for you to do it. Well, what if they lock all your monster zones, Robbie? You better be Nibiruing before they lock all of your monster zones, or you're not going to be able to Space Rock your opponent. So fair heads up on that, right? That's how that works. So good luck. And then, of course, the Nightmare Corruptor Iblee and lingaribo Paradox. Do I need to be, if I'm playing, you know, one of these decks, do I need to have a lingaribo, Robbie? Like, the Nightmare Corruptor Iblee stops me from doing anything. Like, what am I supposed to do here when they hand it to me? Well, that's why we talk about the lingaribo Paradox. If you're playing Kashtira and you get Nightmare Corruptor Iblee, well, you just go ahead and link out and make the lingaribo. If you're a Tier Elements player and you're getting handed a Nightmare Corruptor Iblee, well, you're going to look at your opponent and you're going to be mad AF, because you're probably not playing something like that. That's why you're going to probably start to see a few more players possibly making room in the side deck or whatnot for the lingaribo, because it is the link out target for the Nightmare Corruptor Iblee when your opponent hands it to you. And it's actually very amazing to me that a lot of people just look at Nightmare Corruptor Iblee and they're like, card's not going to see play. It's all very powerful play in the OCG, and it really was a pain in the butt for them to deal with. So if you're planning on playing, Kashtira, and you want to have, one of these power cards in order to do the thing, you have a very good opportunity to do so here. But you got to ask yourself, is it worth it? And the answer is probably for the very early stages. Once people figure out that this is going around, they're going to play the lingaribo, and it invalidates it. So I guess you're going to be playing a game of cat and mouse with this format. Does your opponent have the lingaribo or not for the Nightmare Corruptor Iblee? So those are a lot of pretty interesting things going forward here that I would take note of. But you guys need these cards. Please, so comment down below, tell me what you guys think. I'll see your beautiful faces back here later in the day, guys. Peace out. Patrons, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.